Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to you about a powerful truth, one that speaks to the very heart of our journey. It's a truth that many of us struggle to understand in the moment, but one that holds the key to the blessings that await us. When God calls us into moments of solitude, He's allowing us to be tested in ways that are often hard to understand at first. It's a time when we feel like everything around us is quiet and perhaps even still, but it's exactly in these moments that He is asking us, will you trust me? It's not a test of your strength or your ability to endure, but rather a test of your heart. Think about the moments when all seems uncertain, when the future feels unclear, and the path you once knew seems to vanish. In those times, it's easy to question whether God has forgotten about you or whether He really has your best interest at heart. But that's the very reason why He pulls us into moments of isolation, to test whether we will still believe when we can't see the answers. It's during these moments that we discover the true depth of our faith. Will you remain faithful even when the answers don't come on your timetable? Will you still believe in His promises when you feel like the world is pressing in and it seems like nothing is changing? These moments are not random. They are designed by a God who loves you and who is shaping you for something far greater than you could imagine. It's in the test of faith that you're being prepared for what's to come. So don't let the silence fool you. Don't be discouraged when the world around you seems to be moving forward and you're still standing still. God is never absent in your waiting. He is actively working in you, teaching you how to trust Him fully, even when the circumstances don't make sense. He's refining your spirit and preparing you to step into the fullness of the blessings He has in store. When God isolates us, it's not just about pulling us away from the world. It's about refining who we are at the very core. We often see isolation as a lonely and difficult time, but in reality, it is a sacred space where God works on our hearts in ways that no other experience can. In the quiet, He addresses the parts of our character that need maturing. He reveals the hidden flaws, the pride, the selfishness, the impatience, things we may not even have been aware of. These are the areas that need His touch, and isolation is His workshop. Consider the way gold is purified. It goes through intense heat, being melted and refined until all the impurities rise to the surface and can be removed. It's a painful process, but the result is something pure and valuable. In much the same way, God allows us to go through a refining process during our times of isolation. The heat of life, the challenges, the loneliness, all serve as tools in His hand, helping to mold us into the person He has destined us to be. This period of refinement often brings to the surface things we didn't know were there, like unresolved anger, unforgiveness, or fear. And while it can be uncomfortable to face these issues, it's a necessary part of our growth. God knows that to carry the blessings He has in store for us, we need a character that can handle them. It's not just about what you're capable of achieving, but about who you are becoming. He's more concerned with your heart than your accomplishments. And He wants to make sure that when the blessings come, you will be the kind of person who can steward them well. It's also in this time that God teaches us to rely on His strength, not our own. We can be so quick to trust in our abilities, our plans, and our understanding, but in isolation we are reminded that we cannot do this alone. It is only through Him that we can be refined. The character He's building in us is not just for the moment, but for the future, so that when His blessings come, they will not be squandered. Through isolation, God is building in you a character that will not just survive, but thrive in the fullness of His calling. It is the foundation upon which He will build something great, and it is a process that will lead to a deeper, more authentic life. one that reflects His glory. During times of isolation, when the noise of the world fades away, God gives us the opportunity to draw closer to Him in ways that are often impossible when life is filled with distractions. In those moments of quiet and solitude, we find that the world's pull is momentarily silenced, and we are left with one thing: God. It is here that God invites us into a deeper relationship, a relationship where we rely on Him, not just for our needs, but for our very strength and purpose. Many times we grow so busy, so distracted by the demands of life that our connection with God becomes shallow or routine. We go through the motions, praying when it's convenient, thinking of Him only when we need something. But isolation provides an opportunity to strip away those distractions and be fully present with Him. It's in the stillness, when the world isn't demanding our attention, that we can truly listen to His voice, feel His presence, and hear His guidance. In these moments, God doesn't just want to be a part of our lives, He desires to be the center of it. This is the time when we can cultivate a deeper intimacy with Him, not because we have to, but because we long to. We begin to understand that He's not just a distant figure, but a loving Father who cares deeply about every aspect of our lives. And in return, we learn to trust Him more completely. Think about the way any meaningful relationship grows. It takes time, conversation, and vulnerability. God doesn't just want us to know about Him, He wants us to know Him personally. In isolation, we begin to see God in new ways. We learn about His faithfulness, His love, His mercy, and His power. And as we draw closer to Him, we realize that He is not only with us in the good times, but He is especially present during our quietest and most vulnerable moments. The beauty of this season is that it doesn't require anything from us except an open heart. In isolation, we learn to be fully reliant on Him, not because we're lacking, but because we realize that His presence is what we need more than anything else. It's in this place of intimacy with God that our faith is strengthened and our understanding deepens. We find peace in His presence, joy in His Word, and hope in His promises. Through isolation, God is building a relationship with you that is not based on circumstance, but on trust. As He draws you closer, He invites you into a deeper understanding of His nature and His will for your life. And when the blessings come, they will not only be a gift, but a reflection of the intimate bond you've nurtured in the quiet when it was just you and God. God's purpose in isolating us isn't just to test our faith or refine our character. It's to prepare us for something far greater than we could ever imagine. Often when we're in a season of isolation, it can feel like we're stuck, stagnant, or even forgotten. But in reality, this period is an essential part of God's process to get us ready for what lies ahead. He knows that before He can release His blessings into our lives, we need to be fully prepared, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, for the greatness He has in store. Think of it like a gardener who plants a seed in the ground. That seed doesn't instantly grow into a tree. It has to be nurtured, watered, and protected as it takes root. It goes through a hidden process of growth before it can ever produce fruit. Similarly, when God isolates us, He is nurturing us in ways that are often unseen by the world. He's working on our hearts, shaping our minds, and aligning our spirits with His will, so that when the time comes, we're not just ready for the blessing, we're ready to steward it and multiply it. When you're in a season of waiting, it's easy to feel like you're being overlooked, as though everyone else is moving forward while you remain in the same place. But the truth is, God is positioning you He's giving you the space to grow, to mature, and to prepare for the things that are coming your way. It's in this waiting period that we develop the qualities necessary to handle greater responsibilities, influence, and blessings. Think about the life of Joseph. He spent years in isolation, first as a slave, then as a prisoner, before he was elevated to a position of great power. But it wasn't the circumstances that determined his readiness, it was how God worked in him during that time. Through his isolation, Joseph's character was tested and refined. His faith was strengthened, and he was prepared to lead an entire nation through a time of famine. Had he not gone through the process of preparation, he wouldn't have been able to handle the responsibility of his blessing. God knows that the greater things he has for you require a greater level of preparation. If he were to bless you before you were ready, it could overwhelm you or lead you to misuse the blessing. So he isolates you to give you the time and space to mature, to strengthen your faith, and to learn the lessons that will be essential for your future. And as difficult as it may seem in the moment, God isn't holding back good things from you. He is protecting you, refining you, and positioning you for a season of abundance and influence. The blessing that's coming is not just for your enjoyment. It's for you to be a blessing to others, to be used for His greater purposes. But before that can happen, you need to be ready to carry the weight of those blessings without losing sight of what truly matters, to give glory to God in all things, and to steward what He's given you with wisdom. So, embrace this time of preparation. Know that the waiting is not in vain, and that God is working in you for something far greater than you can see right now. The blessing will come, and when it does, you'll look back and understand that every moment of isolation was a divine preparation for the incredible things God has planned. Trust in His timing and know that He's shaping you to be ready for His great purpose in your life. When God isolates us, it is often to teach us a critical lesson, that we cannot rely on ourselves or on the things of this world, but that our true strength and provision come from Him alone. Isolation has a way of stripping away our false securities, the things we tend to lean on when we feel vulnerable. Whether it's our jobs, our relationships, our finances, or our own abilities. When all of that is taken away or placed on hold, we are left with a singular truth: God is the only one who truly sustains us. In the hustle and bustle of life, it's easy to fall into the trap of self-sufficiency. We become so used to solving our own problems, managing our own affairs, and making our own way that we forget to rely on God. But isolation brings us to a place where we have no other option but to turn to Him for our strength, guidance, and provision. It forces us to face our limitations and realize that without Him we are nothing. Think about the Apostle Paul, who, despite his many accomplishments, came to a place where he recognized his weakness and fully embraced his dependence on God. He wrote in Corinthians 12:9, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.'" Paul learned that true strength is not about what we can do on our own. It's about acknowledging our weaknesses and letting God's power work through them. In isolation, we come face to face with our vulnerabilities. We may experience feelings of fear, doubt, or anxiety, and in those moments, we realize that we cannot fix everything ourselves. It is during these times that God invites us to lean into His presence, to seek His guidance, and to trust Him to provide what we cannot. Our dependency on Him grows stronger, not because we've learned to do everything perfectly, but because we've learned to surrender our will and our efforts to His. One of the greatest gifts of isolation is that it leads us to a place of total dependence on God. It helps us understand that we are not in control of everything, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's the way it was always meant to be. God is in control, and His plans are always greater than our own. The more we surrender to Him, the more we allow Him to lead us, the more we experience His provision, and the more we come to rely on His faithfulness. In this place of dependence, we begin to realize that God is more than enough. He is our refuge, our strength, our comfort, and our provider. It's in isolation that we can build an intimate relationship with God, where we fully trust Him, not just when things are going well, but especially when they're not. We begin to know Him as our all-sufficient Savior. And we understand that every blessing, every breakthrough, and every success that comes in our lives is not by our own doing, but by His grace. So if you find yourself in a season of isolation, remember that this is a time when God is drawing you closer to Him. He's teaching you to rely on Him in ways that will prepare you for greater things. He's helping you build a dependence that will carry you through every season of life, knowing that He is your constant, your rock, and your source of strength. In our weakness, His strength is made perfect, and it's in our dependence on Him that we experience the fullness of His grace and provision. God's purpose in isolating us is not only to refine us, test our faith, or deepen our dependence on Him, but also to elevate us into the right position for the blessings and purpose He has prepared for us. It's easy to feel stuck or overlooked during seasons of isolation, especially when it feels like others are advancing while we remain in the waiting. However, what we often fail to realize is that God is actively positioning us, shaping us, strengthening us, and preparing us for the exact moment when His plan will unfold in our lives. Consider the way a masterful architect plans a building. The foundation may take time to lay, and the construction process might feel slow or even hidden from view, but it's all necessary for the structure to stand strong and steady in the end. Similarly, God's work in isolation is a careful and deliberate process of positioning us for what lies ahead. He's aligning the pieces of our lives, our character, and our circumstances in such a way that when the time comes, we'll be in the perfect place to receive His blessing. God knows the timing of everything. He knows exactly when and where to place us in order for us to have the greatest impact and for His glory to shine through our lives. This is why, in moments of isolation, it can feel like nothing is happening, but God is at work behind the scenes, shifting us into the right position. He's not punishing us, He's positioning us for something greater. Think about the story of David. When God called him to be king, he was isolated in the fields, tending sheep. He wasn't in the palace, nor was he surrounded by powerful people. Yet in that season of isolation, God was preparing him, teaching him how to lead, how to protect, how to be a warrior. It wasn't until later, after years of training and waiting, that David was elevated to the position God had prepared for him. During those years of isolation, God was not just preparing his skills, He was positioning his heart, refining his character, and making sure that when he stepped into the role of king, he would be ready to fulfill the calling God had placed on his life. In the same way, God is positioning you, even if you can't see it right now. He is aligning the right opportunities, relationships, and experiences so that when the moment comes, you'll be in the exact place you need to be to walk in His calling. Whether it's a new job, a new ministry, a new relationship, or a new season of influence, God is placing you where you'll have the most impact for His kingdom. The key is to trust in His timing. It's not about forcing things or rushing ahead. God is never late, and He's always working to position us exactly where we need to be. There may be times when it feels like others are being promoted, blessed, or recognized, but remember that your season of waiting is not wasted. It's God's divine strategy to make sure you are ready for what's next. So when He opens the door, you'll be ready to walk through it with confidence and grace. In isolation, God is preparing you for a moment of elevation. One that will not only change your life, but also impact the lives of those around you. He's not simply positioning you for your own success, but for His glory. Your journey of isolation is not a delay, it's a divine preparation for the significant role He has for you. When you step into that position, you'll know that it was God's perfect timing, His plan, and His work that got you there. Keep trusting Him because He's elevating you for something extraordinary. As we close today, I want to remind you that the journey through isolation is not a punishment, but a preparation. God is not trying to abandon you or leave you in the dark. He is shaping you, refining you, and positioning you for a future that is far greater than anything you can imagine. While it may seem like you're alone in this season, remember that He is with you every step of the way, working in ways you can't yet see. Trust in His timing, trust in His process. Even when it feels hard, remember that every challenge, every moment of waiting, and every moment of silence is not in vain. It is all part of His divine plan to build your faith, refine your character, strengthen your relationship with Him, and elevate you to the place He's designed for you. When the blessings come, you will be ready to walk in them with humility, wisdom, and grace. So hold on, my friends, and stay faithful. Know that God is preparing you for something extraordinary. Your isolation is not the end, but the beginning of something beautiful. Keep your eyes on Him and trust that the best is yet to come. God bless you all.